The great council chamber stretched wide like a metal cave. Hundreds of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved without sound. Light from 3 suns came through the crystal walls, making everything glow with colors that hurt to look at. This was the heart of galactic power, where the strongest species came to decide the fate of whole worlds. Queen Zixandra walked into the chamber. Her body was tall and thin, covered in blue crystal plates that clicked when she moved. 4 arms moved in perfect time as she walked. Her eyes were black like deep space, and when other aliens looked at her, they felt afraid. For 300 years, her people had taken over star system after star system. No one had been able to stop them. She moved to the center of the room. The talking stopped. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. This was the moment the whole galaxy had been waiting for. The Corvani Empire was ready to claim its biggest prize yet. I stand before you today to claim the Terran system. Her voice was cold and clear. The humans are gone, dead. Their world is empty. What few might still live are weak and scattered. They are no threat to anyone. Old Vrex from the Alteran worlds leaned forward. His skin was gray and wrinkled like old leather. He had lived for 800 years and seen many wars. Your Majesty, the old records tell us about human fighters. They say these humans could... Stories. Zixandra cut him off with a wave of her hand. Just old tales told by losers to make themselves feel better. No race could fight the way these stories say humans did. It is not possible. She touched a button on her arm. The air above her head began to glow, and soon a picture formed. It showed a world that looked sick and dying. The land was black and cracked. The water was the color of poison. The sky was full of dark clouds that never moved. This is Earth, she said, pointing at the sad picture. This is what is left of the great human homeworld. Look at it. Does this look like the world of mighty warriors? Their own wars destroyed them. They killed themselves with their own weapons. The aliens in the chamber looked at the picture and whispered to each other. Some shook their heads. Others made sounds of disgust. Earth looked like a place where nothing good could ever live. I have sent my people to study their old cities, Zixandra continued. We found their weapons, simple metal tools, basic guns that shoot metal pieces. Their spaceships were slow and weak. Their armor was just cloth and metal plates. These are not the tools of the superfighters from the old stories. She walked in a slow circle, looking at each group of aliens. Think about it. If humans were so dangerous, where are they now? Why has the galaxy been at peace for the last 50 years? It is because the humans are gone. The most violent species, in known space, destroyed itself, and we are all safer for it. Councillor Thek from the Morvani Federation stood up. His people looked like giant insects with too many eyes. But Your Majesty, what about the colonies? Humans built cities on many worlds. Some of those worlds still send out signals. Weak signals from dying settlements, Zixandra said with a laugh. A few hundred survivors here and there trying to grow food and fix old machines. They have no weapons, no ships, no will to fight. They are like the last leaves on a dead tree waiting to fall. She touched her arm again. The picture changed to show old cave paintings and metal statues. The picture showed humans holding weapons, standing over dead enemies, fighting giant beasts with their bare hands. This is what made the stories, she said. Primitive art from a primitive people. They painted themselves as heroes because they were afraid of everything. Every shadow, every sound, every new world they found. So they told stories about being brave to make the fear go away. The chamber was quiet. Some aliens nodded their heads. Others looked unsure. But no one spoke against her. I have read every record, every report, every story about human fighters, Zixandra said. Do you know what I found? Lies built on more lies. One story says a human can fight for days without rest. Another says they can kill with their bare hands. Some even say they enjoy fighting and get stronger when they are hurt. She laughed again, a sound like breaking glass. Impossible. No creature can do these things. The laws of biology do not allow it. What the stories describe is not a real species. It is a nightmare made up by weak minds. Elder Vrex tried to speak again. Your Majesty, my grandfather fought in the border wars. He saw humans in battle. He said they were like nothing else in The galaxy, they did not fight like other species, they fought like what? Zixandra's voice turned sharp. Like demons, like gods? These are the words of an old being who saw too much war and let fear fill his mind with fantasies. She moved closer to where the elder sat. I have conquered 17 star systems. I have fought against the best warriors from dozens of species. I know what real fighting looks like, and I tell you, no species could do what the human stories claim. The vote began. One by one, each group of aliens raised their hands or made their signs of agreement. Some took longer than others, but in the end, they all agreed. The Terran system would belong to the Corvani Empire. As the aliens filed out of the chamber, Zixandra stood alone, looking at the picture of dead Earth. Soon, her ships would move into human space. They would take the few remaining colonies without firing a shot. The last chapter of the human story would end, and she would be the one to close the book. She did not know that in the dark spaces between the stars, old eyes were watching. She did not know that her words had been heard by those who remembered when Earth burned. She did not know that the stories she called lies were actually the pale shadow of a much darker truth. The queen of the Corvani Empire had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. She had poked a sleeping dragon and called it a dead lizard. Far away, in the cold and empty places where no one looked, the children of Earth began to stir. Captain Sarah Chen floated in the dark control room of the space station Prometheus. The station was hidden deep inside a field of floating rocks, far from any trade routes or patrol paths. For 50 years it had watched and listened to the galaxy while staying invisible. No one knew it was there. No one suspected humans still had eyes and ears in the dark places between stars. Sarah was 45 years old, but her body was strong, from years of training in low gravity. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her dark eyes missed nothing. On her belt hung a knife made from the last steel forged on Earth before the Great Burning. Every human who remembered the old world carried such a knife. The control room was small and cramped. 6 people worked at stations covered with screens and buttons. They wore dark blue uniforms with no flags or symbols. If anyone found them, they would look like simple asteroid miners. But looks could lie. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from his station, "we are getting the transmission from the Galactic Council. The meeting just ended." Sarah turned toward the main screen. The recorded image of Queen Zixandra appeared, her crystal body shining under the council chamber lights. Sarah had seen this alien before in intelligence reports. The Corvani had killed millions of beings across 17 star systems. They took worlds like a farmer harvests grain. "Play it," Sarah said. The recording began. Sarah and her crew listened as the alien, Queen, spoke about humans like they were ancient history. They heard her call human warriors myths and legends. They watched her show pictures of dead Earth and laugh about human weakness. "Legends," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying old anger. "She thinks we are legends." The crew around her said nothing, but their faces grew hard. These were the children and grandchildren of Earth survivors. They had grown up hearing stories of the Great Burning, when humanity's enemies had turned their own weapons against them. They knew what their people had been, and what they had chosen to become. "Captain," said Commander Hayes, her second in command. "What are your orders?" Sarah looked at the tactical display on her screen. It showed the positions of Corvani fleets moving toward human colonies. The aliens thought they were moving against empty worlds or weak settlements. They had no idea what was really waiting for them. For 50 years, humanity had hidden in the dark spaces. They had built new ships in secret shipyards hidden inside hollow asteroids. They had trained new warriors in facilities that did not appear on any map. They had waited and planned and prepared for this day. "Send the recall signal to all deep space units," Sarah said. "Use priority alpha. All commanders will know what that means." Torres's fingers moved quickly over his controls. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters began sending coded messages. The signals looked like natural space noise to anyone listening, but human ears would hear the call. "Signal sent, Captain. All units should receive within the hour." Sarah nodded. She thought about the Corvani Queen and her words about human extinction. The alien had been right about one thing. The old humanity was gone. The people who had lived on green earth under blue skies were dead. But something new had been born from their ashes. "Commander Hayes," Sarah said, "activate the Lazarus Protocol." Hayes hesitated for just a moment. The Lazarus Protocol was the most secret plan in human space. Only a few people knew it existed. Even fewer knew what it really meant. "Are you sure, Captain? Once we start this, there is no going back." Sarah looked at the screen showing dead Earth. She thought about her grandmother, who had escaped the burning in an old cargo ship. She thought about the stories of human cities turning to glass under alien weapons. She thought about 50 years of hiding while other species divided up what had once been human worlds. "I am sure," she said. "Send the activation codes." Hayes entered a long series of numbers and letters into his station. Across human space, secret bases began to wake up. Ships that had been sleeping in the dark began to power their engines. Warriors who had spent decades preparing for this moment picked up their weapons. The galaxy thought humanity was broken. They were about to learn the difference between broken and healing. "Captain," called Ensign Martinez from the communications station. "We are getting responses from the fleet commanders. Admiral Chen sends confirmation from the Wolf system. Commander Jackson confirms from the Vega sector. Captain Williams reports all units ready from the Centauri group." Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. The names meant something to her. These were not just military officers. They were family. The survivors of Earth had stayed together through the dark years. They had married and had children and trained those children to be something the galaxy had never seen before. "What is our current fleet strength?" Sarah asked. 47 battle groups operational," Hayes reported. "Each group has 12 ships. All ships are crewed and ready for combat operations." Sarah did the math in her head. Nearly 600 warships, each one built with lessons learned from humanity's greatest defeat. The engineers had studied every battle, every loss, every mistake. The new ships were not bigger or stronger than what other species built. They were smarter. "Time to target?" Sarah asked. "First Corvani fleet will reach New Harmony colony in 36 hours, Torres reported. "Our closest battle group can intercept in 18 hours. Sarah nodded. New Harmony was a small farming world with 2,000 human colonists. The Corvani probably expected to find frightened farmers with old hunting rifles. They were going to find something very different. "Send a message to Admiral Chen," Sarah said. "Tell him the honor of first contact belongs to him. Rules of engagement. Our weapons free. No prisoners, no survivors, no mercy." "Captain," Martinez said carefully, "should we warn the colonists on New Harmony?" Sarah thought about this. The colonists knew the plan. They had been preparing for this day just like everyone else. But they were civilians, not soldiers. "Send them the warning signal," she said finally. "But tell them to keep their heads down. This is going to get loud." She turned to look at her crew. These were good people who had spent their lives in the shadows. They had watched and waited while the galaxy forgot about humanity. Now it was time to step back into the light. "People," she said. "For 50 years, we have been ghosts. Today, we start becoming human again. The Corvani Queen thinks we are legends from the past. Let us show her what human legends really look like." Around the galaxy, human ships began to move. They came out of hiding places that had kept them safe for decades. They moved toward targets that had been chosen years ago. They carried weapons designed by the best minds humanity had ever produced. The Corvani Empire was about to learn why some species become legends, and why some legends should never be tested. Admiral Krastok stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the green world that hung in space before him. New Harmony looked peaceful from orbit. Small cities dotted the surface like tiny jewels. Rivers ran through farmland that stretched for hundreds of miles. It looked like an easy target. The Admiral was old, even for his species. His thick shell was covered in scars from 12 different conquests. He had never lost a battle. His way of fighting was simple, and had always worked. Bring more ships than the enemy. Use bigger guns. Make them surrender or destroy them completely. Report, he said to his tactical officer. Sir, the planet shows minimal defensive systems. We detect no military bases, no orbital weapons, no large ships. Energy readings suggest a farming colony, with maybe 50,000 people total. Krastok clicked his mandibles together, a sound his species made when pleased. This would be easier than he thought. The humans had probably fled when they saw his ships coming. Cowards, just like the Queen had said. Any response to our surrender demand? He asked. No, sir. Complete radio silence from the surface. Then, they accept our authority, Krastok decided. Begin landing operations. Take the capital city first, then spread out to secure the farming areas. Standard occupation protocol. His fleet had 60 ships. 40 were troop carriers full of Corvani soldiers. 20 were warships to provide support from orbit. It was enough force to conquer most worlds without firing a shot. The first wave of transports began their descent toward the planet. Krastok watched on his screens as they entered the atmosphere. Everything looked normal. The transports flew, in perfect formation, just like they had done on dozens of other worlds. Then space exploded. Ships appeared out of nowhere, as if they had been hiding behind invisible walls. They were not like any ships Krastok had ever seen. They were black and sleek, built for speed and killing. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, turning and spinning without following the normal rules of spaceflight. Where did they come from? Krastok shouted. Unknown, sir. They were not there a moment ago. The human ships attacked like wild animals. They did not form battle lines or follow standard tactics. Instead, they came from all directions at once, moving so fast that targeting systems could not lock onto them. When Corvani weapons did hit them, the human ships did not retreat. They kept fighting even when pieces of their hulls were torn away. Sir, Transport Group 3 is under attack. They are requesting immediate support. Krastok watched in horror as one of his troop carriers exploded. But the human ship that had killed it was also damaged, trailing fire and debris. Instead of running away to make repairs, the human ship turned toward another transport and rammed it at full speed. Both ships died in a ball of flame. They are using their own ships as weapons, the tactical officer reported, his voice full of disbelief. This was not how war was supposed to work. When ships were damaged, they retreated for repairs. When pilots were outnumbered, they surrendered to save their lives. The humans were doing neither. They fought like they enjoyed it. On the planet's surface, the Corvani ground forces were having their own problems. What they thought was an empty farming town turned out to be a trap. Buildings that looked normal from the air opened up to reveal gun positions. Roads that seemed clear were actually covered with mines that exploded when the transport ships landed. Major Elena Vasquez crouched behind a wall that had been painted to look like part of a barn. In reality, it was 3 feet of steel and concrete. Around her, 30 human fighters waited for her signal. They had been preparing for this battle for years. The Corvani soldiers moved through the streets in tight groups, their weapons ready. They wore heavy armor and carried energy rifles that could punch through most materials. But they moved like soldiers from other worlds, following the rules that worked against normal enemies. Remember, Elena whispered into her radio. These are not humans. Do not expect them to think like humans. They will be confused when we do not fight like other species. Use that confusion. She raised her hand, then dropped it. The humans attacked. They did not charge in straight lines. They came from above, dropping from rooftops and hidden platforms. They came from below, emerging from tunnels that should not have existed. They came from the sides, bursting through walls that looked solid, but were actually carefully hidden doors. Elena jumped through a window, her rifle firing before she even landed. Her first shot took down a Corvani officer. Her second shot hit the fuel tank of their vehicle. She rolled behind cover as the explosion washed over the street. Contact! Contact! Humans everywhere! A Corvani voice screamed over their radio. They are not fighting like a normal species. They are using the buildings as weapons. Elena smiled as she heard the panic in the alien's voice. Humans had spent 50 years learning how to fight dirty. They had studied every battle, every defeat, every mistake their people had ever made. They had decided that fighting fair was for species that had backup planets. A group of Corvani soldiers tried to take cover behind their damaged vehicle. Elena's teammate, Sergeant Rodriguez, appeared on a rooftop above them. He dropped 3 grenades with perfect timing, then disappeared before the aliens could shoot back. "This is impossible," one of the surviving Corvani soldiers shouted. "No species fights like this. They are using suicide tactics." But they were not suicide tactics, they were human tactics. The difference was that humans had learned to treat their own lives as just another weapon to be used wisely. Back in orbit, Admiral Krastok watched his invasion fall apart. Half his transports were destroyed or damaged. His warships were being picked apart by human fighters that refused to die properly. Even when human ships were crippled, their pilots kept fighting until their vessels broke apart completely. "Sir, we are receiving distress calls from all ground units. They report the humans are fighting in ways that do not match any known tactical database." "Pull them back," Krastok ordered. "All ships retreat to safe distance. We will bombard the planet from orbit." But when his ships tried to retreat, the humans followed them. The black ships clung to the Corvani fleet like hunting wolves, striking and fading before return fire could reach them. They seemed to know exactly where each Corvani ship would be before it arrived there. "How are they doing this?" Krastok demanded. His science officer looked up from his instruments, fear clear in his multifaceted eyes. "Sir, I believe they are not just reacting to our movements. They are predicting them. It is as if they understand how we think." 6 hours after the battle began, Admiral Krastok sat in the ruins of his command center. 40 of his 60 ships were destroyed. The rest were damaged and fleeing toward the edge of the system. On the planet below, the few surviving Corvani soldiers had barricaded themselves in their landing sites, waiting for rescue that might never come. "Send a message to Fleet Command," he said quietly. "Tell them the humans are not extinct. Tell them the humans are not weak. Tell them," he paused, trying to find words for what he had witnessed. "Tell them we have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping." The message raced across space toward the Corvani homeworlds. It carried news that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about war. The humans were back and they had learned new ways to kill. Queen Zixandra stood in her war room, surrounded by screens that showed nothing but bad news. The crystal walls that had once reflected her power now seemed to trap her in a cage of failure. Reports flooded in from across her empire, each one worse than the last. 3 more fleets had been destroyed. Not defeated. Destroyed. The difference was important. When fleets were defeated, some ships escaped to bring back information. When the humans attacked, nothing came back except broken pieces floating in space. "Show me the recordings again," she commanded. General Vorth, her chief military advisor, touched the controls with trembling claws. The air above the command table filled with images from the battle at New Harmony. Zixandra had watched these recordings dozens of times, but she still could not believe what she saw. The human ships moved like living things. They twisted and turned in ways that should have torn them apart. When damaged, they did not retreat. Instead, they used their own destruction as a weapon, ramming into Corvani vessels with the fury of dying stars. "Explain this to me," Zixandra said, pointing at one particular scene. A human fighter, its hull split open in leaking atmosphere, had somehow managed to destroy 3 Corvani cruisers before finally exploding. "We believe the pilot was already dead," General Vorth said quietly. Life support had failed. The cockpit was breached, but the ship kept fighting for another 7 minutes. "Our scientists think the human rigged his controls to continue the attack even after he died." Zixandra felt something cold move through her chest. Fear. She had not felt fear since she was a young hatchling learning to hunt. But this was different. This was the fear of prey that realizes the predator has found it. "What about the ground battles?" General Vorth activated another display. This one showed footage from Corvani helmet cameras. Soldiers moved through what looked like a normal farming town. Then the world exploded into violence. Humans appeared from everywhere. They came through floors, down from ceilings, out of walls that looked solid. They moved with a fluid grace that made Zixandra think of water flowing around rocks. But this water carried death. "Watch this one," General Vorth said, highlighting a particular human fighter. The human was a female, not large. By the standards of her species, she carried weapons that looked simple compared to Corvani energy rifles. But she moved through a squad of elite soldiers like they were children playing at war. Every motion was perfect. Every shot found its target. When her gun ran empty, she used a knife. When the knife broke, she used her bare hands. "How long did she fight?" Zixandra asked. 43 minutes. She killed 17 of our best soldiers before a building collapse finally stopped her. Even then, she was still trying to reach her weapon when our troops found her body. Zixandra stared at the frozen image of the dead human female. Her face showed no fear, no regret. Only a cold satisfaction, as if dying while killing enemies was exactly what she had wanted. "Show me the one they call the ghost," Zixandra commanded. The recording changed to show footage from inside a Corvani military base. For 4 hours, a single human had moved through the installation like death itself. The cameras caught glimpses of him, never a clear view. A shadow moving down a corridor, a brief figure dropping from an air vent. Sometimes just the aftermath of his passage. Marcus Kane. That was his name according to the intelligence files. Former Earth Special Forces, supposedly killed 50 years ago during the Great Burning. But here he was, very much alive and turning a heavily defended base into his personal hunting ground. "He killed 73 of our soldiers," General Vorth reported. "Elite troops, the best we had. He used their own weapons against them, turned their security systems into traps, made the base itself into a weapon." "How did he finally die?" "He detonated the base reactor. When our reinforcements cornered him in the control room, he smiled at them and pushed the button. The explosion was visible from orbit." Zixandra watched the final moments over and over. The human had not looked defeated. He had looked satisfied, like a job well done. He had traded his life for an entire military installation and seemed to think it was a fair bargain. "General, I want an honest assessment. How many of these humans are there?" General Vorth hesitated. "Intelligence estimates are unreliable. We thought there were perhaps a few thousand survivors scattered across the outer worlds. But the ships we have encountered suggest a much larger population, possibly millions. Millions of warriors like this? That is what frightens me, Your Majesty. These are not their warriors. These are their farmers, their miners, their shopkeepers. The people we have been fighting were civilians who picked up weapons when we arrived." Zixandra felt her legs grow weak. She had to sit down on her throne to keep from falling. If the humans they had fought were civilians, what would their actual military be like? What about their technology? Their ships seem primitive but effective. "That is the strange part," General Vorth said. "Their technology is not superior to ours. In some ways it is inferior. Their ships are smaller, their weapons less powerful. But they use everything differently. They treat their ships like tools instead of treasures. They sacrifice expensive equipment without hesitation if it gives them an advantage." "I do not understand." "Your Majesty, we fight to win battles with minimal losses. We preserve our ships and soldiers because they are valuable. The humans fight to achieve objectives regardless of cost. They seem to value success more than survival." Zixandra thought about this. Her empire had grown strong by being careful, by overwhelming enemies with superior force, by avoiding unnecessary risks. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. What do our allies say? The Morvani Federation has already withdrawn their fleets from human space. The Alteran Confederacy is recalling their trade missions. 3 minor species have asked for peace negotiations with any human representatives they can find. And the humans? Have they responded to any diplomatic contact? General Vorth was quiet for a long moment. "Your Majesty, they have not responded because they are not interested in talking. Our intelligence suggests they are not trying to defend territory. They are hunting us." "Hunting us?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Their fleets are not staying near their colonies. They are moving toward our worlds. They seem to have detailed maps of our supply lines, our military bases, our government centers. It is as if they have been watching us for years, learning our weaknesses. Zixandra stood up suddenly, her crystal armor clicking. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them the Corvani Empire is withdrawing all claims to human territories. Tell them we are pulling back to our core worlds. Your Majesty, surely we can negotiate, perhaps offer reparations, return any captured property. No. Zixandra's voice carried absolute terror. We are going home. All fleets, all personnel, immediate withdrawal. And General? Yes, Your Majesty. Double our border defenses. If the humans want to follow us home, they will find we can defend our own territory. But even as she gave the orders, Zixandra knew it was too late. She had awakened something ancient and terrible. She had poked a sleeping predator and called it harmless. Now that predator was awake and it was hungry. The humans were coming and there was nowhere to hide. The human strike team moved through the Royal Space Station like ghosts made of violence. They had been planning this mission for months, studying every corridor, every security system, every guard rotation. By the time the alarm started screaming, they were already inside the most protected building in the Corvani Empire. Colonel Marcus Kane led the team through the twisting hallways. He was the same man who had died destroying the military base on Velos Prime. Except he had not died. The explosion had thrown him clear, broken and burned, but alive. Human medical technology had put him back together, but it had also changed him. His left arm was now made of metal and carbon fiber. His right eye was a camera that could see in 12 different types of light. Half his ribs were titanium. Behind him came 5 other humans. Each one was a specialist in death. Lieutenant Sarah Park could kill with her bare hands in 47 different ways. Sergeant Mike Chen could hit a target from 3 miles away with a rifle that looked like a toy. Corporal Lisa Wong could make explosives from common cleaning supplies. They moved like dancers, each step planned and perfect. The Corvani guards tried to stop them. These were the Royal Guard, the finest warriors the Empire had ever produced. They had trained their entire lives for combat. They wore armor that could stop plasma bolts. They carried weapons that could cut through tank armor. It did not matter. The humans flowed around the guards like water around rocks. When the guards shot at them, they were not there. When the guards tried to corner them, they found themselves surrounded instead. The humans did not just fight. They turned fighting into art. Marcus moved through 3 guards without seeming to hurry. His metal hand caught a plasma rifle, crushed it, and threw the pieces into another guard's face. His human hand drew a knife that cut through Corvani armor, like it was paper. His artificial eye tracked targeting data and fed it directly to his brain. Throne room ahead, Sarah reported through their comm system. 12 guards inside plus whatever surprises the Queen has prepared. Any other exits? Marcus asked. None. She is trapped. Marcus smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that had finally cornered its prey after a very long hunt. The throne room doors were 3 feet thick and made of crystallized metal. They were designed to stop armies. Marcus looked at them for exactly 2 seconds, then nodded to Corporal Wong. She placed a small device against the doors, stepped back, and pressed a button. The explosion was not loud. It was more like a gentle push. But when the smoke cleared, the impossible doors simply fell apart into small pieces. Queen Zixandra sat on her crystal throne trying to look brave. Around her stood her personal guard, 20 of the deadliest warriors in known space. They held weapons that could level city blocks. Their armor had been blessed by Corvani priests and tested in 100 battles. Marcus Kane walked into the throne room like he owned it. His team spread out behind him, moving to cover all angles of attack. None of them looked worried. They looked like they were coming home. You are supposed to be dead, Zixandra said. Her voice tried to sound strong, but there was a tremor in it that everyone could hear. Marcus tilted his head, studying her with his mechanical eye. That is the thing about humans, Your Majesty. We are really bad at staying dead. The royal guards attacked all at once. They moved with the precision of a machine, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. They were everything the Corvani Empire could create in terms of military perfection. The humans moved like liquid violence. They did not block the attacks. They were simply not where the attacks landed. Sarah Park appeared behind two guards, her hands moving faster than the eye could follow. The guards fell without making a sound. Sergeant Chen fired his rifle once. The bullet ricocheted off 4 different surfaces before finding its target. A guard's weapon exploded in his hands, taking his hands with it. Marcus himself moved through the remaining guards like he was dancing. Every motion had purpose. Every step put him exactly where he needed to be. His knife found gaps in armor that should not have existed. His metal fist crushed weapons that should have been unbreakable. In 30 seconds, it was over. 20 of the finest warriors in the galaxy lay dead or dying. The humans had not even been scratched. Marcus approached the throne, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Zixandra pressed herself back against the crystal, trying to disappear into the hard surface. "The legends," she whispered. "They were real." "No," Marcus said, stopping just beyond the reach of her claws. "The legends were pale shadows of what we actually are. You see, Your Majesty, you made a mistake. You assumed that because we were quiet, we were weak. You thought that because we hid, we were afraid." He leaned closer, his artificial eye glowing softly in the throne room light. "But humans do not hide because we are afraid. We hide because we are kind. We disappear because we do not want to hurt people. When you forced us to come back, you made us remember what we really are." "What are you?" Zixandra asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Marcus smiled again. This time it was worse than before. It was the smile of something that had been hunting for so long that it had forgotten how to be anything else. "We are the species that climbed to the top of the food chain on a world where everything wanted to kill us. We are the creatures that looked at the darkness between stars and decided to make it our home. We are the only known species that makes war into art and death into poetry." He straightened up, looking down at her with eyes that held the memory of burned worlds and broken enemies. "But most importantly, Your Majesty, we are the species that never forgives. You tried to take our worlds while calling us extinct. You laughed at our graves while planning to build on them. Did you really think we would just let that pass?" Zixandra tried to speak, but no words came out. She finally understood what she had awakened. Humans were not just warriors. They were war itself, given flesh and purpose and an infinite capacity for patience. "Please," she managed to whisper. "Please what?" Marcus asked. "Please spare your empire? Please forget what you did? Please pretend that you did not try to genocide the last survivors of Earth?" He shook his head slowly. "No, Your Majesty. You wanted to see human warriors. You called us legends and myths. Well, now you know the truth. The legends were not stories about what humans used to be. They were warnings about what humans could become." Marcus turned and walked toward the door. His team fell in behind him, moving with the same deadly grace they had shown throughout the mission. "Where are you going?" Zixandra called after him. Marcus paused at the doorway and looked back. "To give the galaxy a new legend to tell. One about what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. One about what happens when you wake up something that was better left sleeping. And me? You get to live, Your Majesty. Someone needs to tell the story of what happened here. Someone needs to warn the other species about what humans really are." He smiled one last time. "Besides, killing you would be mercy. Living with the knowledge of what you unleashed will be so much worse." The humans left the throne room as silently as they had entered. Behind them, Queen Zixandra sat alone on her crystal throne, finally understanding the terrible truth. The galaxy had been peaceful because humanity was sleeping. Now humanity was awake, and it was hungry. The age of human kindness was over. The age of human legend had begun,